The first time anyone realized something was terribly wrong, their phones crackled dead mid-conversation as HOA Karen Whitaker raised her hammer high and brought it crashing down on the steel lattice of the neighborhood's lone cell tower, sparks flying like tiny fireworks against the rose-colored sky. Her triumphant grin splitting her face as if she just snipped the ribbon on her own coronation. The wireless world faded in an instant, text threads vanished, calls froze mid-sentence, and the hum of internet life died in one deafening clang that echoed across manicured lawns, leaving behind stunned silence and the distant wail of car horns as motorists realized GPS had abandoned them, their routes evaporating like mist in the morning light. In that shocking instant, Elmwood Estates lost more than a single cell tower. It lost the illusion of suburban serenity that had long masked a simmering tension between neighbors and the self-appointed enforcer of architectural purity, whose demands had grown from hedge height to property setbacks to internet decibels, until finally she declared the strongest signal of all to be the crack of her hammer. Across the street, I watched from my window, coffee cup poised mid-sip as the world went dark, and a single thought pulsed through my mind: this was war. By midday, the underground counteroffensive had mobilized. I'm not just any homeowner. I own a mobile command center, retrofitted RV bristling with satellite dishes, emergency power generators, and a rooftop antenna array powerful enough to blanket the entire cul-de-sac in high-speed signal. I pulled the RV into the cul-de-sac like a general arriving at the front lines, its engine growling approval. With a few taps on my tablet, I rerouted satellite bandwidth, restoring service to my fellow targets now stranded in digital darkness. Word spread of the mobile command center's arrival, and neighbors emerged like soldiers from foxholes, their faces lit by the glow of fully charged screens. Maria, my best friend and tech-savvy litigator, hopped out wearing a headset wired directly into the RV's network, her eyes flicking across screens that tracked live social media feeds, local traffic cams, and even HOA board meeting recordings. When Karen stormed back to inspect her handiwork, hammer still clutched in one hand, her other hand perched on her hip like a judge pronouncing sentence, she found the entire neighborhood streaming live video of her rampage, complete with running commentary. There goes the last bar of coverage, folks. HOA Karen meets small claims court. The truth was undeniable. Her act of vandalism, once a private fury, had exploded into public spectacle. The community buzzed with outrage and disbelief. Some cheered the poetic justice, others lamented the lawless descent of their tranquil streets. Karen's eyes narrowed as she peered at the screens, realizing the tides of public opinion were turning like storm clouds gathering on the horizon. No mere property dispute, this was a calculated assault on modern life itself. Karen dialed the HOA president, demanding immediate reparations and threatening fines that could bankrupt any family without a corporate sponsor. Instead, the president forwarded her voicemail to the district attorney's office, and legal notices fluttered through doorways like autumn leaves. Small claims court summoned witnesses, insurance adjusters measured twisted metal. A forensic engineer pronounced the tower's structural integrity irreparable. Meanwhile, I parked my command center at the edge of the lot, its satellite dishes spinning like radar arrays at midnight, broadcasting a signal stronger than any phone line could carry. Neighbors lined up outside my RV, retrieving voicemails, checking email, reconnecting with loved ones, and each face lit by the soft glow of restored connectivity, seemed to crack Karen's veneer of authority just a little more. When she returned that afternoon, hatchet in hand, her latest accessory in a war against utility poles, she found me waiting by the RV door. "You can't homeless me off the grid," she spat. I smiled and handed her a tablet displaying the HOA bylaws she'd signed at induction, clause after clause forbidding armed property destruction, and mandating mediation before any structural alteration. Then I pressed play on a recording of Karen bragging at the last HOA meeting about her plan to take down cell towers like weeding a garden, her voice dripping with vengeful delight. The words rang out like a confession, and the gathered crowd murmured in shocked unison. Just when it seemed the case would settle into tedious legal maneuvering, an unexpected twist roared onto the scene. Julio, the shy groundskeeper Karen had hired only to enforce her edicts, stepped forward with a covertly recorded message of his own. He described the midnight sabotage Karen had orchestrated on the Johnson's fence, hammer blows muffled by a blanket so thick it sounded like someone kneading dough, and how she'd paid him to claim it was an accident of weather. His voice shook as he revealed surveillance footage of Karen ordering him to make the line clean. her silhouette illuminated by his flashlight beam like a director staging a scene of covert aggression. The court gasped. The judge leaned over his bench. Even the bailiff's jaw dropped. Karen's scheme unraveled in real time, her role morphing from neighborhood watchdog into criminal mastermind. Maria stepped forward, citing case law on conspiracy and property damage, her voice calm but relentless. Your Honor, this isn't merely a boundary dispute, it's a pattern of intimidation, trespass, and willful destruction of public infrastructure. The judge's gavel hovered like a lightning bolt before it fell, echoing across the hushed chamber. Order in the court. Karen's cheeks flushed crimson as she realized that her own gardener had delivered the fatal blow to her reputation. The twist transformed a simple skirmish into a cautionary tale of power abused and the fallibility of unchecked authority. The courtroom spilled into the hallways afterward, neighbors clustering in whispered clusters, trading theories and half-smiles as if Elmwood Estates had been reborn in the flicker of courtroom lights. Karen, her oversized hammer smuggled into evidence, sat alone on the bench, staring at her reflection in the polished floor like a monarch dethroned. Her sculpted coif drooped. Her designer blouse seemed out of place among legal paperwork and scuffed shoes. Outside, the mobile command center's dishes continued to spin, a beacon of resilience towering above the hushed crowd. Maria emerged carrying 2 takeout coffees, black for me, double cream for her, and we toasted to a verdict still pending but already etched in public memory. That in the clash between modern necessity and archaic enforcement, ingenuity and solidarity would always trump brute force. As we walked past Karen's empty seat, I felt the weight of what had begun as a petty HOA spat transform into something far greater. A reckoning on the meaning of community in an age where connectivity is lifeblood, and where one person's vendetta can sever the ties that bind us all. Now, as the first wave of neighborly applause faded into relieved laughter, the question lingers in the air. Was Karen justified in her crusade against the technological sprawl? Or did she cross a line that no hammer should ever breach? Share your verdict, right or wrong, and help us chart the boundaries of justice in this brave new world. As the courtroom door swung shut behind me and Maria, a heavy silence settled over the polished marble floors, only to be shattered by the triumphant hum of my mobile command center's engine idling outside. Neighbors spilled from the benches in hushed excitement, their faces lit by the glow of restored screens and newfound hope, as though they'd just witnessed a miracle born of satellite waves and collective courage, rather than the simple snapping of phone signals. Karen sat alone at the defense table, her gaze fixed on the scattered fragments of her reputation like shards of broken glass, each one reflecting a moment of hubris that had led her from self-appointed arbiter to criminal defendant. I felt no joy in her downfall, only a bittersweet sorrow that someone so consumed by order could have lost sight of community so completely. As Maria and I passed her on our way out, I allowed a brief nod of acknowledgement, a silent recognition that every person, however flawed, carries the potential for redemption if given the chance to face their own failings. Outside, the midday sun beat down on Elmwood Estates like a spotlight on a freshly cleansed stage. The RV's satellite dishes spun lazily, as if exhausted from their victory over Karen's sledgehammer. Children clustered around its open door, wide-eyed as they peered into a world of network maps and blinking routers, dreaming of careers as engineers and technicians. I watched them and felt a surge of warmth, knowing that our stand had accomplished more than legal justice. It had sparked curiosity and unity in a neighborhood too long fractured by petty rivalries and fear of the unknown. That evening, a hush fell over the cul-de-sac as neighbors gathered for an unplanned victory celebration, in the very shadow of the fallen tower's wreckage. Strings of solar-powered lanterns dangled from the rebar jutting from the twisted steel, casting dappled light over picnic blankets laid atop picnic blankets, each one a tapestry of colorful quilts, beach towels, and repurposed tablecloths. Laughter rippled through the air in waves of relief and defiance, each chuckle a declaration that Elmwood Estates would no longer bow to the tyranny of one woman's rigid obsession with perfection. Karen arrived at the fringe of the crowd, escorted by the local constable who'd retrieved her oversized hammer as evidence. Her eyes darted among the smiling faces, the children chasing each other around the rubble like dinosaurs stalking prey, the rebuilders hashing out plans to erect a new, community-owned microcell array that would never again be at the mercy of a single person's grievance. Maria fell into step beside me, handing me a cup of lemonade sweetened just enough to remind us that even victory could taste gentle. What's next? I asked her softly, not entirely certain if I sought logistical plans or philosophical insight. She watched Karen approach, shoulders hunched as if bracing for jeers. A hush rippled through the crowd as Karen cleared her throat, unaccustomed to standing without a podium or a pair of shears clutched in hand. The constable gave her a final nod before returning to the huddle of neighbors discussing signal coverage maps. I know I've caused pain and chaos, Karen began, her voice thin but steady, the harsh edge of her former self softened by genuine contrition. I let my fear of change and obsession with control break trust and tear apart our community. I'm here to make amends not because a court forced me, but because I realize now that being part of a neighborhood means accepting differences, listening, and sometimes letting go of the scissor that cuts too close to the bone. A collective exhale washed over the crowd as heads nodded in unison. Some neighbors dabbed at their eyes, a few wiped away tears. Karen continued, I've arranged to fund the construction of our own microcell network. It'll be solar-powered, community-managed, and open to every NINO bylaws. No secret fees, just connectivity and cooperation. I'll also devote every Saturday morning to teaching digital literacy classes inside that RV of yours, she said, glancing at me and offering a tentative smile. If you'll have me. The brief pause that followed felt infinite. Then Maria stepped forward, offering Karen her hand. The crowd erupted in applause so loud the twisted tower scrapings seemed to vibrate in approval. Children ran between adults, weaving a living tapestry of reconciliation that shimmered with the promise of something kinder than the iron-fisted rules of yesterday. Over the next weeks, Elmwood Estates hummed with purpose. Our mobile command center transformed into a roaming education hub, where Karen led weekly workshops on how to build DIY antennas and log into community forums, her once fearsome presence now guiding neighbors through circuits and code instead of threats and fines. The local hardware store donated parts, and teenagers who once feared being on Karen's bad side now raced to volunteer, soldering circuit boards under her careful supervision. To her credit, Karen approached each challenge with the same determination she once applied to enforcing hedge heights. Only now her passion sprouted rather than pruned, nurturing curiosity and connection. The Johnsons hosted midday barbecues beneath the new microcell mast, its slender white pole rising like a banner of unity against the cerulean sky. Maria organized monthly signal and serve events, combining network maintenance with community cleanup, where neighbors swept sidewalks and patched fences before convening to check signal strength and discuss local needs. The once silent lot that bore the corpse of the cell tower now thrummed with life. Daisies and dandelions sprouted between gravel stones, children skidded on chalked hopscotch grids, and volunteers routed rechargeable batteries into weatherproof housings to keep the network humming without a single utility bill. Each node of the mesh network bore a small plaque etched with the names of donors, reminding everyone that it takes a village to power the future and that every voice matters, once you give it a platform. It wasn't all smooth sailing. Some skeptics whispered that Karen's gesture was another ploy, that her check would bounce, or that she'd sabotage the network when memories of her cruelty faded from headlines. But then Julio, the groundskeeper turned whistleblower, stepped forward again, this time not to expose wrongdoing, but to share stories of Karen's dedication. He described how she spent late nights poring over network diagrams, her brow furrowed in concentration, or how she'd personally delivered cookies shaped like tiny routers to elderly neighbors to help them get online. She's not perfect, he told a local blogger who chronicled the transformation, but she's finally using her energy to build rather than destroy. His words spread like wildfire, blunting the arrows of cynicism and fanning the flames of communal hope. Slowly, the whispers turned to affirmations, and the network became more than a tangle of signals and code. It became proof that a person can change, that forgiveness can be earned through sustained effort, and that a community's strength lies not in uniformity but in the weaving together of diverse threads. As the months passed, Elmwood Estates evolved into a model for suburban renewal. Other neighborhoods reached out to learn how we had turned conflict into collaboration, and delegations arrived to tour our decentralized network, our mediation circle, and our weekly digital literacy classes. Judge Malone invited Maria to speak at a restorative justice conference, where she recounted the saga of sheared hedges, a ruined tower, and a transformed Karen, framing it as a parable of civic engagement in the digital age. Karen, once the poster child of HOA tyranny, now stood at podiums as a cautionary tale-turned champion of connectivity, her voice steady as she urged other communities to prioritize dialogue over decree and shared responsibility over solitary power plays. The irony was not lost on any of us that the same woman who once severed the neighborhood's lifeline now helmed its renewal. On the day our RV network was officially decommissioned, its dishes folded down in symbol of a mission complete, Karen and I stood side by side, passing the keys to a newly formed community tech cooperative. The final plaque, emblazoned with the words "From Conflict to Connection," was mounted on a wooden post before being raised along with a hand-painted banner proclaiming, "Our network, our neighborhood." Children darted beneath the posts, attaching paper lanterns that spelled out unity in colorful letters, and neighbors joined hands in a circle around the mast, their laughter intermingling with the soft hum of signal traffic routing seamlessly through the mesh we'd built together. In the years that followed, the story of how HOA Karen brought a sledgehammer to a cell tower and forgot that her neighbor owned a mobile command center became legenda, cautionary anecdote, whispered at HOA meetings and tech conventions alike. It served as a reminder that unchecked authority can sever more than physical structures. It can erode trust, stifle innovation, and isolate even the most connected among us. Yet it also stood as evidence that compassion, when wielded with equal force, can rebuild bridges stronger than steel, weave networks more resilient than any tower, and heal wounds deeper than those left by shattered metal. Karen herself came to embody that dual lesson. A figure whose journey from scorned tyrant to beloved mentor illustrated the redemptive power of accountability, empathy, and the simple willingness to learn from one's own mistakes. Elmwood Estates flourished under a new ethos. Respect not enforced by bylaws and fines, but nurtured through conversation, shared purpose, and the knowledge that the greatest infrastructure we build is the human connection underpinning every signal, every handshake, every act of kindness. Now, as you close this chapter of our communal saga, we return to the question that began it all. Was Karen justified in her crusade against the cell tower's hum, or did she cross a line that no hammerer, by extension, no rule, should ever breach? Was her transformation authentic, or merely the product of public exposure and legal consequence? Share your verdict, right or wrong, and become part of the ongoing conversation about how we strike the balance between order and freedom, between individual zeal and collective well-being. After all, our story proves that the sharpest edges are not those of blades or bylaws, but those of the decisions we make when we choose to build, to forgive, and to reconnect.